All right, Dan, the mini camp is here for the Detroit Lions. And obviously, when we talk about this, this is, you're not usually expecting a little bit of news to come out. But boy, did Dan Campbell let something out of the bag. And it's going to be interesting to kind of break this down. Obviously, we're going to go over all the things that happened at mini camp. But when we talk about what happened at mini camp, it wasn't in the play. Obviously, people feel differently about mini camp. They think that mini camp is something like, pajama pants. Even Dan Campbell said that himself. But when you hear what happened, what Dan Campbell said about one unique player, Terrion Arnold, it's interesting because he basically said Terrion's only goal right now is to get fully healthy and ready for camp. But then he has to go out and earn the starting cornerback job. A 2024 first round pick is not being handed anything. That's the headline of the day. Because we always hear about the Detroit Lions, and we think about the Detroit Lions in a multitude of different ways. When they're not ready to give Terrion Arnold the starting job, it tells you an awful lot. And they shouldn't be able to just hand Terrion Arnold the job. The reality of the situation is his play has not dictated him to get handed the starting job. Second of all, I have news for Terrion Arnold. You added Roger McCreary, he could potentially start. You added guys like Izzy and you brought back Rocky Sin and you have added depth to secondary, Keith Abney. Like Terrion Arnold is in a world of hurt. And what Dan Campbell said today, obviously this is just mini camp. Okay. Obviously, mini camp is a huge deal for getting into the groove. And it's the last time they'll see these players before training camp. So when Dan Campbell said he has to go out and earn it, he means it. Like, he doesn't usually say something like that because that's actually like kind of condescending. And what it says to me is it's not just talk. With Arnold limited as he works back from his shoulder injury, obviously we know that he has had a shoulder injury. He ended his 2025 season just after 8 games, but Ennis Rakestraw was taking first team reps opposite Reed. 20 Men noted that Rakestraw had visibly added muscle, a name to watch with veteran Rocky Sin also in the mix. It would be completely just shocking to me if Arnold didn't start and Ennis Rakestraw did. What a world. Like, everyone wrote Rakestraw's obituary. And after a couple games, we've seen Terrion Arnold kind of get a little bit better. And then the injury ended it. And obviously there was some offseason hoopla around Terrion Arnold. But if Rakestraw takes the spot, whoa. Because, when we think about that 2024 draft or, 2024, 2025, I'm forgetting it. It's escaped me. But when we think about that draft, Rakestraw was a guy that it was back-to-back cornerback picks, and it was Arnold and Rakestraw. And if one of them hits, you can consider it kind of a win. If neither one of them hit, it's going to be a painful loss. And obviously, Brad Holmes is not ready to admit defeat. But Arnold not being told that he is going to be the starting corner is something. That's why we led with this story, because this is the most interesting thing. Basically, Dan Campbell said Arnold is on notice. He has to earn that starting job. It's not It's not going to be given to him, and he better come to play because he's going to have to earn it. And that's what you want out of your coach. And Coach Campbell said a lot of things today in terms of the competition. They're younger, all that we know, but. And man, if I was Terrion Arnold, I'd be feeling really, really kind of shocked, to be honest. And it'd be a rude awakening to lose your spot as a starting cornerback after 3 years. You had 2 years where you started, and if you lose it to Ennis Rakestraw or you lose it to Rocky Sin, that would be absolutely just devastating for him personally and professionally, because you're not going to get this chance again to be a starting cornerback right away. And obviously you got to go earn it. And I love that Dan Campbell is putting it out there that he has to earn it. That's just what I took away from that. But there's a lot of other things to get to. Obviously, Arnold said after practice he expects to be ready for training camp in July and framed his time off as personal growth, cautiously optimistic, and he is not a full participant yet. And Campbell just told everyone that spot is earned, it is not given, and that was a huge point to Terrion Arnold. That for me, this means that Detroit is done waiting on draft pedigree for Terrion. He's got to go win the job in pads and hold it. He's gonna have to hold it. And we talk about if you're a Kenny Rogers fan, the gambler, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Arnold better hold him or he's gonna fold him. So it's an interesting. This was something I did not see coming from the Detroit Lions. I did not see Dan Campbell coming out and saying something like this. Usually you would see Dan Campbell be very player driven. He did not be player driven here. He basically threw Arnold under a bus, and not under a bus, but saying you got to go earn it, and it's not given to you. And for Rakestraw to take first team reps, for Rakia Sin to take first team reps, it's kind of go time for Terrion Arnold. He has to get in going right now. Also, mini camp, Campbell on the camp approach, push but don't break. He was asked directly how he'll handle camp after 2 injury-wrecked seasons. Campbell said they'll push the players, but be smart about it. Same approach and mentality that they've always had, prepping bodies for the regular season without breaking them. My honest read to that is it's the right answer, but it's also an answer to give with no matter what. 2 years of bad injury luck means, the proof is how many reps they actually get. And I think the joint practices for Detroit are actually going to be, I think they were a detriment, to be honest. I think it put a lot of wear and tear on their bodies. And when you think about joint practices, if you went to joint practices, they're very tough. And obviously when you're playing your guys and you're not, it's a tough way to go, man. And I think when you have that kind of, I look at New York and they had some injuries. I looked at, Indianapolis a couple years ago, they had a lot of injuries. So it may be something I would love to see a study of how joint practices and injury related things happens. That's kind of what I look at. But Dan Campbell said that, and it's going to be interesting what happens there. Chuck Clark. We talked about Chuck Clark yesterday. He got an interception yesterday. He was signed this offseason as safety depth. Clark has taken all the starting reps alongside Christian Izien, with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch still rehabbing. He's 123 games, 80 starts, and he picked off a pass yesterday. 20man calls him from DetroitLions.com, calls him and Jack Campbell the clear vocal leaders of the defense. The point, a depth signing has become a defensive voice, which tells you how big the leadership vacuum is in that secondary with Joseph and Branch out. I will say this. Knowing Chuck Clark, I've watched Chuck Clark at various stops, especially with Baltimore, with Pittsburgh. He is a veteran, and he's a veteran leader, and he's someone that I think Brad Holmes hit the mark on. You want to sign someone who's going to be a leader, and if Kirby Joseph or Brian Branch come back and you put Chuck Clark into a depth role, he's going to take it at will, and he's going to basically be the same player that he was. I think what could happen is if you get a guy that's a name and you bring him into Detroit and Brian Branch comes back and this guy goes to the bench, you could have a little bit of an issue. I think Detroit wanted to kind of quell that, and they got a good safety in Chuck Clark. Chuck Clark is a pretty good safety, and if you've watched him, his stats, they're pretty good, but they're not overwhelmingly great. But it just goes to show you, there's more to the game than just stats. There's the leadership angle. And when Tim Twentyman's seeing this and he's seeing Campbell and Chuck Clark are the leaders of the defense, that tells you everything you need to know about this Detroit Lions football team heading into training camp. Now, we're going to get a law, but we're still going to be active on this Detroit Lions News podcast YouTube channel. We have the podcast tomorrow, but we will still be active. We're not taking any time off. We got to grow this thing, get before football season. So we will stay here, and we're going to do the position breakdowns like we have. And Chuck Clark is going to be a big one in the safety. We'll talk about it in future episodes. But we'll talk about situational football right now because the defense won the day today. And Campbell ran a 2-minute drill, down 9 drill. Goff and the ones marched down. Completions to Gibbs, Tesla, Jamo, and St. Brown on a 5-yard touchdown. But the simulated timeout sequence left them out of time, and Williams couldn't get out of bounds for the final crosser. Defensive win. Second team, Bridgewater drove them down too, and Jake Bates buried a 63-yard field goal with 10 yards to spare to win it. If Bates' leg is a genuine weapon, it's a real talking point. And look, anybody who's watched Jake Bates, like, you understand he is a massive player to this team because it opens up the opportunities when you get past the 40-yard line or you get past the 45. You see with the Dallas Cowboys, Brandon Aubrey is a legitimate weapon for the Dallas Cowboys to maximize. Jake Bates could be in that same category. We watched Jake Bates the last couple of years make some really huge kicks. We've also seen him miss some kicks, and his consistency is what has to push him forward. But Jake Bates is going to be a weapon. You watch. He was very raw in the UFL or XFL, whatever the hell it was, AFL or whatever the hell it was. You seen him in the first year, wins that game against Houston. Last year he needed a little bit more consistency in my feeling. But when we break down the kickers this before training camp, you're going to see he's a pretty damn good kicker. He just needs to be a little more consistent. And if he could be that guy that you could rely on at the 40-yard line, he will get it and he will kick it and it will be good. You're in Brandon Aubrey territory. Brandon Aubrey getting 3 points every time you get past the 50, being a lock, is just a huge weapon for the team. And it's a huge weapon for the Detroit Lions. If Jake Bates could be anything close to what Brandon Aubrey can. There's not many kickers that could do what Jake Bates, Brandon Aubrey, Cam Dicker, Harrison Butker, those guys are legitimate weapons. And if Jake Bates can enter that category, it unlocks more of the Detroit Lions offense that we didn't really think we would actually have. All right, let's get to some more things that would happen in minicamp. D-line coach Casey Rogers talked up the added length, letting them mix packages, 4 edges or 3 defensive tackles and an edge. It showed in 5-man front, Hutchinson, Tyreek Williams, Levi Onwuzurike, Ali McNeil, and DJ Watt all on the field together. The pads come on in camp. Before you know it, you'll know how it truly plays out. But position flexibility in the offseason is the headline. You know that they have some length to their team. They have some versatility. We talked about it yesterday about DJ Levi Onwuzurike. We talked about him in the positional battles. We put him at end. We can put him at tackle too. Mekhi Wingo is the same way. DJ Wanham could play linebacker. He could play edge. Tyreek Williams, you're expecting him to get better. Ali McNeil said he's back to his form. If everything hits, or even 60, 70% of things that we are talking about hit, the Detroit Lions defense will be much better. Now, we're truly not going to know what this team is going to be until the pads come on. That's when we'll start to figure out who this Detroit Lions defensive line is. I don't think they were as bad as they were last year. I certainly don't think that they're as limited in depth as they were last year, but we shall see. Quick hit before we run. The Lions signed Tay Martin, Tariq Black, and Lucky Jackson, and placed rookie Kendrick Law on reserve, injured, torn ACL. Martin is the one to know. He 42 catches, 483 yards, 2 touchdowns in the UFL, 3rd in the league, bottom of the room depth, not a threat to the top, obviously. If you're a fan of the Michigan Wolverines, you know who Tariq Black is. He's a big wide receiver who could maybe catch on here. We'll see what happens there, but obviously minicamp is ended. The Detroit Lions are going to be going away for the summer. Dan Campbell's going to be, trying to, they're all going to try to take their time off and get ready for the season. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in training camp. We're going to talk about it on the Detroit Lions News podcast from here on out, going into training camp, going into the season. We will be full steam ahead. Obviously, we took a little bit of time off, a couple weeks, and we will keep going on this right for you guys. So If you like the video, please subscribe. We'll keep you up to date with top-notch content on the Detroit Lions News podcast. And a reminder, we will have a podcast tomorrow. Me and James will be live on the podcast. Detroit Lions News will be broadcast on Detroit Lions News, either on Facebook, Twitter. We might just do a YouTube this time. And we'll see you guys tomorrow as we talk Detroit Lions football. Mini camp has ended. We'll talk about all the gatherings. I'm interested to hear James's opinion about Terrion Arnold. We'll talk to you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. And subscribe if you like the video. Comment what you think about the Terrion Arnold situation. Do you think that Dan Campbell was in the right saying, go earn it? What do you think? We'll talk about it next on the Detroit Lions News podcast. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you.